Welcome to the King of Cool podcast. I'm Mark Keller, and today I am with my old dear friend Gene Pressman, the author of They All Came to Barneys.
Brown's in London was a great store in the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
And owned by a wonderful lady named Joan Bernstein.
Yep.
And her son, Simon. And we started buying from them in, I guess, mid-70s. They came out with their line. They were like the first store, and there was another French store named Marcel Lassance that came out with their own line, and that's how I started Basco, because I was very impressed that they would do that. So I went to Brown's, and Michael and I went, and there was a young guy there who was selling us the men's lines. We only had men's then. We went to see women's lines in 75. They didn't come until 76, about your time. And so there was a young guy there. And the next season, we go back to London. And this young fellow calls me up. And he goes, Gene, I left Brown's and I started my own line. Can I come? He called it a range. He said, can I come and show you? I said, sure. I'm with Michael in the hotel room. Come on over. And he lugs in these, sort of a gangly looking guy. He comes in with two huge suitcases, huge. And I'm doing sit-ups and push-ups on the floor. I didn't mention this, but exercise is also another thing, like music. Forever I've been doing it.
Same.
You know, you have to. Thin is to win. Okay, so he goes, Michael, I'll wait till Gene finishes. And he goes, no, start showing him because he's going to do this for a while. So I'm doing sit-ups. And he opens up and he has a range of shirts. And they're really cool. Little collars. That's when little collars started. Little collars, very soft. He's showing them to me, and I'm feeling sorry for this guy, because I know he's struggling and he's just starting out. So I said, Michael, buy them all. So he buys them all. Anyway, his name was Paul Smith. So Paul and I still laugh about it to this day. I talk to Paul all the time.
Well, actually, Paul's definitely going to be on this because I'm going to tell you how I met Paul. So me and Kenny Fabricant, I don't know if you remember Kenny. He had rosy cheeks in Hanover. So we're at I think it was the Doral Hotel. It was the first men's show there that they had. And we walk into a room and we see this nice range of clothing. And I say to the guy, I said, how do those pants fit? He goes, hang on, mate. Takes his pants off. He's got on blue and white polka dot undershorts, boxers, puts on the pants, says, what do you think? He said, we're in. And whenever I went to London, we'd always go see Paul. And I had bought my wife a bunch of sweaters at Joseph's. And we had too much. So I said, Paul, where should I go? I got to get something. He puts us in his Jag, goes to an army surplus store. He said, get that duffel bag. And it was like, Paul Smith is truly one of the greatest designers in the world today. And Paul was the first salesman for Nigel Caborn, who just passed away. I don't think you guys ever bought Nigel.
I don't know if we did or didn't. Paul is a real gentleman. Has never changed.
Nope.
He took me, I remember after a couple of seasons of him being in business, he took me to an area in London, the Flower District, which became now is big district, but it never had developed. And he goes, he was so proud. He had just bought this little building, which became his first shop. And I think on Floral Street or something. And
it was on Floral Street.
It was a
Covent
real,
Garden.
yeah, it was a real dilapidated building. He was so proud that he could buy this. You know, it's probably worth a fortune now. But anyway, yeah, I'm proud of Paul. He did it. So there was there was a men's show in Paris. In those days, there's always these people showed in shows, which I hated. You know, I preferred going to showrooms later on, but they didn't have that then. So if you remember, in the beginning, they had that huge show right near Charles de Gaulle out in the airport, that big men's show that you would go. I was like, I had to go on roller skates for like 3 days. The women's was in there. It was huge. SEM, I think it was called. SEM.
That's exactly what it was.
Okay, and then it had the women's too. So there was another hotel in London or Paris, I don't remember, maybe Paris. I think it was Paris, and they had young designers there. This was men's and women's. And they, up in the attic, there were these 6 Belgian designers that were showing for the first time. And of course, the French hate the Belgian. They treat them like shit. So they always tell them they speak French the wrong way, and, you know, they abuse them forever. And they stuck these 6 kids up there, and they couldn't afford anything, these kids anyway. And so Michael and I, we bought the men's, and nice guy, very shy. And the next season, it was during the women's show, or next few seasons, he decides to do women's, or he didn't do, sorry, he's showing men's again. And my wife, Barney, at the time, if you remember her.
I do remember Barney.
She was a great merchant. She ran women's. She went there and she looked, Barney had great style, and she loved the old white shirts, guys' white shirts the women wear, loves that, you know, ever since the Marilyn Monroe days, you know. So she saw all his white shirts, and she goes, "Can you make these in women's sizes?" And he said, "Sure, why not?" And she goes, "Can you make me 30 pencil skirts?" And he said, "Okay." And his name was Dries Van Noten.
Of course.
And so that's how we started. That's how we started women's, because of us. I had another friend who, she's one of my best friends today. She was the greatest wedding, I guess, dress designer in the world. And so we said to her, "Why don't you make some ready-to-wear? We'll help you exclusively for Barneys." And she did. So that was Vera. And, you know, Vera Wang and I, we love Vera. And then we opened up a studio for Vera. We opened our LA store. And she did huge movie star business. I mean, we had a huge studio business, like you wouldn't believe. Because we had them all. I mean, you know, whether New York or LA, we had them all. So the only store in 1976, 7, that had sort of contemporary was Bloomingdale's. They had the Young East Sider. So they had a few sort of Frenchy lines. So, and the only thing that existed domestically, besides jean lines, was Junior or Missy.
Right.
And Barney's women's in the beginning was very expensive designer. So I needed something that would complement that a woman could wear on the weekends or her daughter could wear. And it didn't exist in the market. So I started a contemporary business. And one of the first lines we did was Basco. and brought Lance in. He did Lance was a great designer.
Lance Karish was one of the sweetest, nicest men that I had ever known in the business. And he had great taste, great style. And he's missed today. I mean,
I agree. You know, that was before vintage was called vintage and it was chic.
Right.
It was called thrift shop.
Yeah.
Or Army Navy.
And that was Lance.
Yeah, that was Lance. So, and I met Michael through Lance. They're both that way. They both look. Oh, Michael more looks like he fell out of bed, but he did it chic in a chic way. You know, he had a great eye. We had so much fun. My God, we laughed and laughed. Oh, because we didn't take the shit. We were serious, but we didn't take it seriously. Right. And you were the same way, by the way. You have, to this day, you're always happy. You have a sense of humor.
Well, we have to.
You keep it light. No, that's what it's got to be fun. You know.
Well, that's what people sometimes say to me. They go, "When are you going to retire?" I go, "What retire? If I didn't enjoy what I was doing, I'd retire." And I think that's why most people retire, because they don't like what they're doing. But I still have fun on a daily basis.
Are you a year younger? Are you a year younger than me?
1949.
Oh, you're a year older than me. Okay.
Thank you. But thank you for the compliment.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I met someone older than
me. So let's get to how it all fell apart. The worst part.
Well, there's good and bad. So, in 1989 was just before, or just as the starting of a terrible recession that was starting to happen in America. We had opened up 3 years prior a very successful women's store that was killing it. And now we were really in the women's business, and it was growing exponentially more than even the men's. And it was way cooler. And it brought in a whole new customer, like Armani. When my father discovered Armani, which is another story that we should talk about. My father discovered Armani in 73, 4. That changed everything in men's. What we did in women's, because Barneys, like I said, didn't do Brooks Brothers or Paul Stewart of women's. It went crazy. And everybody, including you, shopped there to see what we were doing all the time.
Absolutely.
It used to drive me crazy, but then I sat down and had a conversation with myself and say, look, I'd rather be copy than copy. Okay? So, and then I chilled out. No, because all the Japanese, they come in like 20 at a time with cameras and they would, go nuts. So remember, this was New York. So
listen, I always said, if imitation is the supremest form of flattery, I'm flattered. Thank you very much.
I agree. And it's wasted energy. You know what I mean? It's like, so my brother and I split our responsibilities. And we were, at that time, I guess we were executive vice presidents, or almost, then we became co-presidents and then co-chairman as my father started to chill back a little bit. And he was responsible for finance and operations, and I was responsible for merchandising and marketing. And, there were no secrets. We knew what each other's doing. And in a family business, it's an interesting dynamic. There has to be trust, And before, it was run by my father. And I got there in 72, so I watched eventually my grandfather started annoying my father. And my father started gracefully wanting to tell him to retire. He was 80. And eventually he did. I loved working with my grandfather. So my father ran everything. And he was very unusual. I guess I have that too. He was right and left brain. I'm sure you have it also. That's very, very unusual. Being creative both in business as well as in creativity, and be able to balance that in a way where you don't sacrifice your art, but you build as big as business as you can. So you maximize your business. And so, and I was in Barneys for 7 years before my brother. Anyway, in 1989, we hired Goldman Sachs, who at the time was the preeminent investment banker. And we said to them, you know, we'd like to find a partner outside of the family because we'd like to start to grow. And my brother had this idea of opening smaller stores or stores in other areas around the country, which we called Barneys America. And I was sort of mixed. I mean, I like the idea of escaping Chelsea, but it made me nervous because I didn't want to open big stores. I was scared. I didn't know, except for LA, maybe Chicago, I didn't know how much the market was ready for us because we really were dealing in high fashion. And we're talking about 1989, not 1979 or 69. And even, it sounds like they should have been ready, but only smaller stores like yourself had each market. There weren't a lot of these stores, and the bigger stores didn't go near it. So it was a big leap. And so my brother and I talked about my father, and we decided that maybe like 6,000 feet, 8,000 feet was the maximum that we would go. And that's still a pretty big store.
Yep.
You know? And so I was concerned about it because what was the merchandise mix going to be? It wasn't going to be Barneys. How do you merchandise Barneys in 6,000 feet? You can't. Do you carry suits? Do you carry one suit line? Is men's all men's sportswear? Do you carry men's shoes? Do you carry men's accessories? Do you carry women's ready-to-wear? Is it just a co-op store? Do you carry women's cosmetics? Do you carry women's shoes? Do you carry women's cosmetics? Do you carry Chelsea Passage? You don't want to speak Barneys around the country and have it watered down. So it was truly a dilemma, a big dilemma. So I made some decisions, and we started. The other issue that I had, and it was a big issue for me, not so much for my brother, because he was good at negotiating, and he made some very good business deals because the landlords wanted Barneys badly. So we could get free rent, free build-outs. Well, to me, that's one thing, but it wasn't the motivating factor because you could fail. So he wanted to go to the malls. Barneys was not a mall store. And the deal we made, Goldman Sachs said, well, does it have to be domestic money or could it be international money? What do you think about going to Asia, to Japan? There were 3 stores, Japanese department stores, that existed. There was Seibu, which was the coolest store. They were like Bloomingdale's. There was Mitsukoshi, which was like the high-end store like Bergdorf's. And then there was another store that I wasn't really very familiar with that it was kind of like, called Isetan. So I didn't know Isetan, but I came to find out that it was the most profitable of all the stores. And the original deal was weird. The original deal was they gave us $12 million, nothing, right? To open up a series of smaller stores called Barneys America. And for that, we gave them the license for Barneys New York in Asia. That includes Japan and Singapore. I don't remember all the details. And they went and completely followed everything that we did. They call it the AIR of Barneys, like AIR meaning AIR. And they hired buyers to hang with our buyers in specific areas. And they did exactly, they bought out of our buy, but then edited to the Japanese market. So it was Barney's taste. It was incredible. Because this was some project, not easy to do. They even put Chelsea Passage as the main floor. Japan doesn't do that. They do other things. Were doing things that they never did in Japan. Well, it became instantly successful, like on fire. And Peter Marino designed it. So to make a very long story much shorter, we learned a lot. We started changing the mix on the fly because people wanted more, which was good news. We didn't realize that actually they could be very successful, but we were scared to build bigger ones. We started building like 10,000 feet, but there were a couple of areas that we did not do well. Like Short Hills, New Jersey, we first went there, we closed that. Cleveland, they maced our salespeople, so we closed that. And then there were other ones that did okay. Every single Barneys America store, except one, was profitable. Every single one. But did that mean I liked them? We went to Texas. I just came back from there on a book tour. And I'll never forget, we opened two beautiful stores, one in Houston and one in Dallas. And we opened a Roger Thompson salon, or hair salon, in Dallas. This guy, who did phenomenal at Barneys, was the right-hand man. He was English. He was the right-hand man of Vidal Sassoon, who was the number one hairstylist in the world in the 60s.
Right, at the time.
He was as good as you get.
Right.
I am in, I think, Sardinia with Peter Marino on vacation. And I'm reading the Wall Street Journal, front page, and I fall out of my chair. It was an article about Barneys in Dallas, and it was a quote by Roger Thompson saying, "We don't do big hair." And I go, oh my God. I said, we might as well leave now. Because, you know, they thought we were like sort of the elitist, obnoxious people from New York. But I said now, because, you know, Texas and New York have always had this competitive thing going. I said it's over. Well, eventually we did leave. And we left Houston too. I will tell you that, but that's not what got us in real trouble. That is what people talked about. But when we built Madison Avenue, the overruns were insane. And I wasn't specifically aware of them, and I should have been, because I did have the co in front of my name. And my father was like me. He was busy merchandising, but he decided to put on his business hat again and he lost it. He went nuts. And he told the CFO, who was a brilliant guy, who was working directly for my brother, to come into his office. And he said to him, I want you to drop everything you're doing. And I don't want you to do anything else or leave. And only pay attention to how much it's costing us to build Madison Avenue. And that's going to be your only job until it's done. Obviously, my brother got a little upset. We'll leave it at that.
As we
There were
should.
tremendous, I don't point fingers because we're all ultimately involved. But, you know, I'll just leave it at that. And so there was tremendous overruns there. We had to borrow more money. We went through a tough recession because 92, 93, 94, 95 were ugly, if you remember. And then it started getting good. Just as we were filed bankruptcy, when we were coming out, it got really good, right? So of course, the next group took the credit for the 80 years of, ignored work. So I will tell you, we also built Yokohama, which is a gorgeous store, it's 80,000 feet, LA, which was 120,000 feet or 100,000 feet, and Madison Avenue all at the same time. LA did 120 million and 100,000 square feet. Right. These are big I think that, I don't know exactly, but I think Barneys Japan at some point did, I don't want to speak out of school, but $500 million.
And there's still a Barneys
And they're still cooking.
in Japan.
But they don't have direction, that's the problem, I love them. They were wonderful. And a lot of these guys left and went on to run one of my favorite Japanese stores that I always shop at in New York is, what's that store on Fifth Avenue, the big jeans store?
Oh, Uniqlo.
Yeah, Uniqlo. That's one of my favorites. The head merchant came from Barneys Japan. He's the head guy, the fashion guy, the whole thing. Nice guy. So what else is new, right? So anyway, yeah, I think I'll answer it this way, because you asked first of all, when things hit you, you're so deep into it, it didn't just happen all of a sudden. If I could have done it again, it's very simple. I would have had probably only 3 stores in America, 2 in New York, 1 in LA. They would have done, I don't know, $600 million or so. I would have had about the same amount of business on the internet. So I would have had over $1 billion company, which would have been easier to run. And I would have opened a lot of resorts, hotels, and condos because our customers would have followed us anywhere. And we would have had restaurants in them, little stores. Anything that I think that where we could pay attention to detail and make it entertaining. I mean, in a store today, like what would have been Madison Avenue, 50% of the store would be merchandise, and 50% of the store would be probably an 800-seat concert hall where you would have rock concerts and you'd have kids shows and you'd have Broadway shows and you'd have reviews and you'd have comedy hour and you'd have private movies. You could have constant entertainment that would do well. You'd have a 50,000 square foot food hall because that's definitely fashion. And I know we'd have our own product lines and it would be incredible. Lots of restaurants and other things that would be commensurate with what we were already doing with Barneys. We would add huge vintage, which we already sold. Our friends Dumas in the 1980s, our friends the Dumas, and they were really our friends, said to us in a nice way, take the vintage Hermes bags out of your store, or we're not going to sell you Hermes anymore. Okay, and so did Chanel. We were carrying this stuff for anybody. And so whatever you can sell that customers believe in, if it's authentic, I hate that word, but if there's viability that you think you could legitimately sell it and people would entrust in you, why wouldn't you? To this day, Barneys is on the tip of everybody's tongue. It makes me laugh. They're opening a Barneys in Naples, Florida. Good luck to them.
Well, I was going to, I guess I was going to save that for the end. I mean, once the genie's out of the bottle, I don't think you can recreate something that special ever again. I don't think it'll ever happen, not in this day and age. And I don't know who the customer would be.
I think it could, but differently. It would have to be run by very creative people that get it, not talkers that ran wholesale businesses or big company. It'd have to be somebody that really is very exposed culturally to so many things and has already done it. You can't replace experience. You just cannot. We talked about that in the beginning. And so I've been playing around with a few ideas. I will tell you, if I do something, because I'm like you, I still have energy. If I do something, it's either going to be where I'm going to own a piece, but be more on a consultant kind of basis, put together a very qualified, young and mature combination staff that can implement this with some direction, obviously. I don't want to be day to day, but I could certainly get this done. There's all kinds of things I could get involved with that I'm sure could give a run for its money. Part of the thing is you got to have a feeling not only about merchandise, but about talent. That's so important that you could recognize talent or nurture talent. And so, if you interview some oddball, most people would just tell them, nice to know you, and get out of your office. Me, I get enamored with that because I see talent there. And maybe it's just never been directed in the right way. And you have to have patience to expose people to this. But they're there. There used to be a thing called albums. 13 songs on it. Every single one could have been a single. Today, forget about it.
It still exists. Listen, Barry Pearlman and Gene Montesano, the guys that started Lucky Brand, have the best record store in America, in LA. It's called Super Vinyl. You would love it. I mean, it looks like it could have been.
Is this new stuff or old stuff?
Brand new.
No, new records?
Yes.
New artists?
Yes. And old. Everything. You would love the store.
If someone wants to has the knowledge and the taste and take the time to discover new things, you could kill it. I tell you this, right? I'm going to go check that out. Send me a text on that.
I will.
Because it's inspirational for me. I will tell you that if I had all the money in the world, I would start a fund of just backing young talent, and I would stay with them. That was a success. That was the secret sauce of Barney's. Armani didn't even sell in our store for 5 years. We stayed with it, okay? It was too avant-garde for people. All these people, we stayed with it until they did, and then we sold them like hotcakes. you know? And
Well,
then, of
listen,
course, everybody else wanted them.
I think over the years, like you said, was nurturing great people that worked for me, because without the great people on the floor, you're dead. Because you go into a store today and, like, first of all, nobody engages you, nobody talks to you, and nobody helps you. So it's
There's
like,
no energy.
it's not that I,
No energy. There's no passion. There's no love. You go in there, and you could have the worst morning in the world. You go in there, and all of a sudden you're excited again, and you have energy, and it translates to your staff. And that's the key. Okay, it's like a general. You know, it starts from the top. It always started from the top.
it always has, and it always will. And unfortunately, the top right now is a little bit old and crusty, from retail to the way this country's being run. And we won't even talk about that. But I mean, I don't know that, and Lord knows we have talked for a long time. I think that what you created, and on a much smaller level, what I created, is something that is magic for people. And I'm sure every day you hear the same thing if you're out. Oh, I still have that Dries that I bought from you 30 years ago. Or, oh, I still have that Kick It sweater, Mark, that you sold me. I mean, what we did was magic. Now, I'm not even sure anymore.
So, Mark, maybe we should do something.
Gene, let me tell you, I assure you that there are plenty of people that you and I could engage in, and we could recreate, or not recreate, create something great. But I will take it under advisement. And I couldn't think of anybody better to do it with than you.
You know, it's a New York Times bestseller, as you know, and I want to sell a lot of these things. So I will tell people that they should definitely read it, because first of all, it's a quick read and you'll laugh your ass off.
True, I read it.
You might learn something.
Also true.
And it won't just be about fashion.
No, it's definitely cultural.
Well, I speak in front of a lot of fashion schools and schools in general. There are lessons to be learned by my mistakes and otherwise, that could be applied to any discipline.
I agree. I said the same thing in my last podcast, that I've learned more from my mistakes than I have done from my successes.
Do you know who the most brilliant discoveries in the world were all done by accident?
There you go.
No one's that smart.
No, of course not. So I think the best way to end this is to say that either late September or early October, Gene Pressman will come and sign books in Birmingham, Michigan at the Matilda by Mark Keller store.
I'm going to bring my wife too.
I would hope. Yeah. I would hope. So we'll keep you updated on the date. And Gene, we could keep talking, but Roberto, the production manager over here, is kicking me because he's got to edit all this. So thank you so much for everything. And this is going to truly be great.
No, I enjoy this a lot. You have to come to West Palm Beach, Mark.
I will. Well, I'll come there and you and I can help Palm Beach Pete become the mayor.
Right.
Right. All right, Gene. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. Be good. This episode was brought to you by the Matilda by Mark Keller flagship store in downtown Birmingham at 227 South Old Woodward. Ask for Mark, ask for Izzy, ask for Lucy, or ask for Camille.